Hello, hello. Thank you, everyone who is joining us today for this panel on what does it mean to be veteran friendly, how businesses can create more inclusive environments for military veterans. I'm Greta Lax. I am a coach, consultant, and facilitator, focuses on DEI and intercultural development. I am located here in the state of Wisconsin in the Fox Cities area, where actually all of my fantastic panelists are also located today. We're going live via StreamYard, and we're streaming to Facebook, LinkedIn, and to YouTube. So if you've got folks who are interested in seeing this here today, recording should be available on all of these platforms after the session here today. If you're here watching us live, if you don't mind, drop a comment letting us know that you're live. If you're catching the replay, hashtag replay and let us know that you were here. Let us know if you've got any questions along the way. I'll do my best to keep an eye on the comments. Sometimes it's a little bit hard here from StreamYard, but we'll do our best. I'm really grateful for all the panelists who are joining us today. It was just a couple weeks ago, actually, I was having a conversation with one of Zach's team. Shane Kanneberg is a regional manager for the Wisconsin Chamber. We were having a conversation and talked about the question came up, we kind of talk about and make the assumption that everybody knows what veteran friendly means. And I like to get curious about the assumptions that people make because I think that there's a lot more there than a lot of people really consider. So it seemed like a fantastic opportunity to dive a little bit deeper. So I was grateful to be able to reach out to some friends and friends of friends and colleagues here and bring these folks together to help answer that question, especially with Veterans Day approaching here, coming up this weekend. I see you, Shane. So glad that you're here joining us. So I am very, very happy to be able to introduce to you today our panelists. I'll go through the list briefly. Just to let you know who's all here, and then we'll come back and let each one of them add a little bit that they'd like to add. So first we've got Darlene Zabel, who's a Coast Guard veteran and talent and acquisition partner and military program lead with Oshkosh Corporation. Thank you very much, Darlene, for being with us here today. We've got Timber Smith, an Army Reserve veteran, special assistant to the mayor and DEI coordinator for the city of Appleton. Hello, welcome, Timber. We've got Fannie Shi, an Army veteran, a small business owner, and president of the Northeast Wisconsin Chinese Association here in our area. And last but certainly not least, we've got Zach Zabel, a Navy veteran, vice president of the Wisconsin Veterans Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all so much for being here today. If you don't mind, I'm going to give each of you a chance to add anything that you'd like to add to your introduction. Tell us a little bit, if you feel comfortable, if you'd like to tell us something about your service and why you're here today. Why were you willing to answer the call today and come talk with us and our audience? Is there anybody, actually, I'm going to go in alphabetical order this time, and then we'll switch it up the rest moving forward. So Darlene, if you don't mind.
I'll go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Darlene. Greta already introduced me. I'm a TA partner, and I lead our military talent programs for Oshkosh Corporation. I am a Coast Guard veteran, so I graduated from the Coast Guard Academy in 2015. I then commissioned as an officer, and I was stationed out in Hawaii as a deck watch officer. And then my last tour was in Houston, Texas at Vessel Traffic Service, more like a watch center for any sort of maritime incidences. So my military background really has nothing to do with what I do today in recruiting and HR and leading military talent programs. So I feel like, I know we'll touch more on this later, but that's kind of like one key to being veteran friendly is being open to transferable skills, which is what Oshkosh Corporation did for me. So I transitioned out of the service in 2020. I was stationed in Houston at the time, and I really was not sure what was out there in the corporate world. Very, very clueless. So when I was transitioning, I heard junior military officers are a great fit for project program management, operations, supply chain roles. Veterans probably still continue to hear that today. So that's really what I was targeting when I was getting out. And then Oshkosh reached out and asked me talk a little bit more about this community service you've done, Darlene, which is really partnering with the Boys and Girls Clubs wherever I was stationed at, or giving tours to the next generation of high school students, elementary school students. And so when they heard me talking about that, they offered me a fellowship, an HOH SkillBridge fellowship in talent acquisition, working on our early talent programs. So that's where I started off in Oshkosh. And it was a unique role. I am not from Wisconsin, so I didn't know anything about this area. I was like, I don't know if I want to move that far north. But it was a unique opportunity that I wasn't getting from any other organization. So Oshkosh really took a chance on me, trained me to do what I do today, and I absolutely love it. I've been with them ever since, and now I get to do what I absolutely love, which is helping veterans find their role at Oshkosh. So to me, being truly veteran, or why I decided to do this panel, Greta's question, is I love giving back to this community. I'm passionate about it. I want to help share the knowledge that I've learned since I've gotten out and just help that next generation of veterans.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your story, Darlene. Timber. We go to you. And I do want to give folks a little bit of warning because I heard some rumbling in the background. We're in the middle of some thunderstorms where we are right now. So if you hear that, that's Mother Nature saying hello.
All right. Hello, my name is Timber Smith, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coordinator for the City of Appleton. And first, I just want to start off by saying in my last couple of roles that I've had, I've kind of been in this space where I work with specific or special or marginalized demographics, and veterans are DEI too, or diversity, equity, and inclusion too. And as we have this conversation, I'm hoping the reasons why are gonna start to really come up and point out what makes our veterans so special, but also why we need to take special care to make sure we're providing opportunities for our veterans. I was in the Army Reserves. My MOS, as they call it, or my job in there, was a 42 Echo, which was an optical lab technician. So basically, I made glasses, or us in the military, we call them BCGs, which were birth control glasses, because they were hideous, they were ugly. But I will tell you this: those things never broke. They lasted forever through anything. But that's what I got to be. So basically, I was a military optician. I did get to bring that back to the civilian world when I did come back, and I did it actually in civilian life for a couple of years, but that wasn't the end game. Fast forward, what I really went into the military for, and what I did continue doing, was to pay for school. I wish I could say that it was for some other amazing reasons, but to be perfectly honest, I joined to be able to get some benefits and to be able to cover my college costs. So eventually down the line, I ended up working for the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, and eventually ended up becoming their Veterans Services Coordinator. So I actually got to run the Veteran Services for the university, which in part was both an internal and an external, where we oversaw the benefits of veterans going to college, and then also to create relationships and outreach outside of the college to provide opportunity for our veterans and to connect them to the different resources and services that are available that you may or may not know exist. Particularly when you're dealing with a college veteran population, a lot of times they're just coming back. They may just be ETSing or just coming back, and so they're not sure. They're just connecting. They're just trying to figure out how to become a civilian again. There's a lot of different things going on, and so there was a lot of stuff that we tried to help with that transition. So the main reason for me being part of this conversation is over the last so many years, particularly maybe the last 7, 8 years, I've really had an opportunity to work with our veteran community locally to try to connect them with opportunities, whatever that looks like, whether it was educational, whether it was employment, maybe it was internships, or maybe it was the resources that they needed to be able to help with their transition or to support their families. So.
Thank you so much, Timber. Thank you. Fannie.
Hi, my name's Fannie. I'm an Army veteran. I served as a mental health specialist in the Army for 6 years. I joined the Army since 2009, and I joined as a reserve. However, right after my AIT training, which is our skill training, that I was called to duty to deploy to Afghanistan. And that was quite a transition for me. I did experience a lot of transaction problem. And after I coming back from Afghanistan, I experienced transition issues coming back, including like physical issues, mental health issues, and I have to transform from a soldier back to a civilian really quick. Because for active duties, you transition back to your unit and you still have a job and maintain where your daily life used to be. But for me, I have to transition to civilian job to have to find a job right away to maintain my financial stability, and I have to continue back to my school where I was registered for school before I deploy, and I have to reconnect all my friends and families back home. That was quite a challenge for me, and after all that, I decided to continue my career as a mental health specialist. I went to school for social worker program, and I was going for clinical social worker where I can continue help the veteran groups with mental health issues. But I made a transition into clinical social worker into more nonprofit side right now. I dedicated myself to the DEI work, which is helping the minority, helping the veteran groups, especially for female groups that's being marginalized in the society today. So I'm here today to provide my personal input, both as a small business employer, because I'm a small business owner now, and as a veteran employee, which I have been in the workforce for more than 10 years as a mental health professional.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Fannie. Zach, over to you.
Yeah, my name is Zach Zabel. As Greta said, I'm the vice president of the Wisconsin Veterans Chamber. A little bit of my background, I was active duty Navy for 6 years, from 2007 to 2013. A couple deployments, was fortunate enough to visit a lot of interesting places. Been to 9 different countries, albeit only a few days at a time, but still an interesting experience to have. And I was an electronics technician, although what I was doing in the Navy was more aligned with IT. So a lot of the, I guess the civilian counterpart would be your corporate level IT, doing a lot of troubleshooting, resetting passwords, all the base level IT things. And I loved IT so much that I got out and went to business school because I did not want to do IT ever again. So double shout out to UW Oshkosh that Timber mentioned earlier, earned my bachelor's and my MBA there at Oshkosh, and currently attending UW Whitewater, earning my doctorate of business administration with an area of research specifically in those challenges that were mentioned earlier by my fellow panelists about those transitioning service members and the opportunities that would be optimally available to what really, in my opinion, is an underrated project management scope that a lot of veterans have, that we are not trained on how to articulate that in our transition. So that's specific what I'm looking to in my research. But as far as my role at the Veterans Chamber, I've been with the Chamber for over a year now. Moved into my VP role about 6 months in. A lot of changes at the Veterans Chamber, been around since 2015, but we're really going through an exciting transition as an organization, some change in leadership, really updating, who we are and how we engage with the veteran community. And the short version of the Chamber's mission is we want to serve veteran-owned businesses and veteran-friendly businesses, and we would like all businesses to fit into one of those two categories. And one thing, just selfishly, I'm very excited about my other panelists because they represent some very key stakeholders in who we're trying to engage at the Chamber. We have veteran-owned small business, we have medium to large enterprise with talent acquisition, and we have government. And so this is literally who the Chamber wants to engage with. So I feel pretty spoiled to have my fellow panelists. So thank you, Greta, for putting this rockstar group together.
Thank you. Thank each of you for sharing a little bit of your stories. I think it gives the audience a chance to connect a little bit with you, with your experiences, and kind of with who you are, and hopefully see why I'm so grateful to have you all here today. One of the places that I'd like to start actually is talking a little bit about what are some of the challenges that veterans face. To help give people, why are we talking about this, right? Why are we talking about what it means to be veteran friendly? How can we outline what some of the challenges are that veterans face moving back into the workforce, either as business owners, as employees, those kinds of those options. So kind of whoever would like to stop or whoever would like to pick this up. I know a couple of you even touched on this in your introductions. So what are how can we help people understand what some of the major challenges that veterans are facing during that transition?
I'll jump in if that's all right. My fellow panelists don't mind. Just real briefly, if I was trying to, be succinct about it, the greatest challenge that veterans have transitioning back to the civilian sector is just the breadth of diversity in experiences. Just on the panel, we have active duty, we have reserve, there's different branches, there's a lot of different jobs in those branches, there's a variety of time served, there's a variety of, type of service. So it's the biggest issue when we're talking to, especially those medium to large enterprise that I mentioned earlier, is really trying to educate those non-veteran hiring professionals just how to wrap their head around the massive variety and variance that is military service. We have officers, we have enlisted, and like I mentioned, the duration of service. There's just so many variables that I think a lot of that stuff just kind of gets lost in the weeds a little bit when people try to wrap their mind around it.
I can go next. I feel like there's two big things that stand out from like a large corporation standpoint. First is that I talk to a lot of not just transitioning, but a lot of veterans daily about roles here. And I think that veterans don't quite understand all the roles there are in corporate America. And a lot of them target project and program management. They think there's always those two roles, like as if 99% of the roles we have are in that area, but that's actually a really small percentage. Now, it's not saying you couldn't use those skills in a different type of role. So what I try to do when I talk to these candidates, if they just say project program management, they're not quite sure what they want to do, I try and ask them, what did you enjoy doing in the military? What would you like to do when you get out? It's okay if you want to go into a completely different field, like Zach did it. He was in IT and now works in a completely different field. I was a ship driver and now I recruit. So you can do that. And I think that's what being a veteran-friendly company does, is you take chances on veterans based on their transferable skills, not necessarily this is XYZ what they did in the service, so this is what they should do when they get out. And then from a corporation standpoint, I also have a hard time, Zach kind of mentioned it a little bit, is getting our leaders who aren't as exposed to the veteran community to understand the background of these candidates. Because a lot of the times they'll see, a resume and it doesn't look like a traditional candidate. It doesn't look like like a normal like person who's worked their way up in supply chain. It might look a little bit different. And so deciphering that resume, basically translating from military terms to civilian terms, I feel like is key for corporations to be veteran friendly. So I always recommend having at least one veteran on the TA team just to help with that. And if you don't, if you have like a smaller business, then partnering with some of your veteran employees, your veteran employee business resource groups to just get a second opinion and that'll help translate for those hiring managers who might not be as open initially when they see a resume and get them to be interested.
I have several points I want to make. That first of all, as a small business owner, I understand how hard is it to transition out of the military into the civilian life and trying to build a business. That means one, you have to networking, and then maybe I was moving from a post into a new location where I'm not familiar with. And it's really hard for me to build those connections because I just met these people and I'm not familiar with the area. It's hard for me to do the market research of the area. And then for small business owners, it's important if you want to get a loan, you have to have a great relationship with the banks. And as we know, in the military, we don't have great credits. And at the same time, it's hard for us to build a long-term relationship with our local banks too. So those are the challenges for me when I try to start my business, the lack of networking opportunities when I was in the Army, or the lack of connections of local business and connection networks. And the other thing is when I try to talk to people about my military life and military career and jobs, they sometimes, when they do not have a clear understanding of the ranks, the jobs and the skills in the military, they get really confused. For example, I was talking about I was a behavioral health specialist in the Army. And I have somebody asking me really confusing about, are you saying you are a contractor for the Army that was hired to help the soldiers with mental health problems? I said, no, we are all soldiers. And then we all we are soldiers at the first place. And then we all have our different skills that we have that contribute to the workforce or your business. So I think before you are ready to hire a veteran, maybe get some basic knowledge about ranks and jobs and skills and the military structures, so you can better understanding their strengths and their skills they already obtained during the Army or the military. And then the last challenge I want to mention is that a lot of workplaces claiming they're veteran friendly. That means they are really passionate about hiring veterans. But after the veterans are hired, the support kind of stopped there. It's not like you hire a veteran, it's happily ever after. There's the continued support and the follow-ups to those veterans. Are they transitioning okay with their skills? Where do they want to go in their career? Do they need extra trainings? Do they need a mentorship? Do they need somebody that's familiar with the military environment that mentor them, guide them to go to where they are? So the follow-ups is really important for me.
That's fantastic. Thank you all so much for sharing. I heard lots of common themes in there. You each brought kind of a different perspective to it, but certainly the challenges, the ongoing challenges of translating the language, the structures, the experiences, talking about transferable skills. Those are, it's interesting because these conversations have been going on for a very long time, right? And as the workforce changes, as the people change, as the roles change, both outside and inside of the military environment, right? That has to be an ongoing process, an ongoing conversations with folks like you and with folks who do this work to help ensure that whether it's small businesses or medium to large size government, right, that that we're having that same conversation, that we have a language to be able to talk about this, and that we have tools to help those veterans, right, to make that transition. Is there, I do want to talk a little bit about transferable skills. So we will, I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but is there maybe Zach or Timber, is there something specific, or even Darlene, I'm thinking too, actually, all of you, is there a tool, like, so if that's something that somebody wants to learn about right now, right? They're like, oh, okay, that's something that I can learn more about. What do you recommend? Is there a tool, a resource? Where's one of the first places that you send folks that come to you that want to learn more about that?
I know that, oh, you go ahead, Timber, if you.
Oh, no. I bet what I was going to say is I do know, like, there's websites out there that you can put in your military background, and it'll help translate it into civilian speak, so to say, that you can put it on your resume. So I know that's one of the tools that you can utilize. And then there is a number of services, veteran services, where you can go speak with what I would call a resume coach or a career advisor, a military career advisor, that will help you translate your military skills into civilian speak. I think sometimes where some of the biggest gap comes in these situations is like, particularly in the leadership realm, in military leadership, like, it's not hard for someone of certain rank to be in charge of hundreds of people. And you don't, the workplace doesn't understand that was the level of responsibility that they had. Like, not 10 people, not 20 people, but literally 100 or hundreds of people. And so it's so important. And then I think there's the challenge of how does the service member package that in such a way that the workplace can understand it. Those HR people can understand what does it take to be that level of leader, um, and translate it over. Um, so I do think those coaching opportunities are super important, and then to utilize those online resources that can help you with your translation.
Absolutely. Just to build off of that, want to raise awareness to some of the existing infrastructure. And that's something we do quite a bit at the Chamber, because all of us on the call probably know, there's not really a shortage of resources for veterans. It's really the organization, understanding, and access to those resources, which is something we try to do at the Chamber is, but anyway, I digress. But the existing infrastructure along, DWD, the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development, there are offices across the state called lever offices, and there are DVOPs, and there's no shortage of acronyms once you get into the the veteran infrastructure. But the purpose of those offices is to help veterans find employment, prepare themselves for employment. They do resume reviews. And those offices are all over the state. So if you're not sure, if they're, a veteran watching this, not sure where to go, a quick Google search, if you just, LVER, and where your zip code, and that'll probably direct you, to the right spot. But I would encourage all veterans, especially the transitioning service members that are trying to figure that thing out. What do I bring to the table? We have the limited TAPS class, which is a transition assistance program that involves 7 different federal departments putting that program together pretty holistically. It's kind of a quick hit. They bombard you with all of the resources and all the best practices and mock interviews, and they kind of throw all the civilian terms out in a week. And, after that, you're kind of on your own. So just wanted to raise some awareness for all of the, resources that are available. Obviously, we don't have time to, go over every single one. I would encourage, anybody who's interested, to either reach out to the county veteran service office, which is another resource. So every county does have a veteran service office that we would encourage you reaching out to. Otherwise, just call the chamber and we can connect you, with where you need to go. But as far as the question, at the end of the day, it really comes down to education. The transitioning service members or even the veterans, there needs to be better education available for people to articulate the, Timber kind of hit it on the head. The amount of responsibility that a lot of these roles in the military have, half the time, it's not even articulated when you're doing it. It's just everything is so task oriented in the military. They give you something and you do it. There isn't a big rah-rah, meeting about how awesome we are after the fact, because after you put that fire out, there's another one, another thing to do. Like Darlene mentioned, she was in charge of a boat. What's the dollar value, on that asset if this was a for-profit corporation? It's not just the value of the boat, it's the opportunity cost if something happens to the boat, it's the downtime, it's the, and all of a sudden these numbers start racking up, and going on a simple, what we would, Darlene may consider a routine mission, has $1 million of impact if it was a for-profit company. And how do you articulate that as a young junior officer transitioning into the workplace? That's not part of TAPS. You don't get a handbook on how to articulate that. And that's really what we're trying to address. The high level stuff with the websites and the translators. I recommend that for hiring professionals who have absolutely zero exposure, to the military, because they are very high level. It's very 30,000 foot level. It gives you some terms as a starting point. So there are national nonprofits, there are federal programs, SHRM, the HR and management organization, they have a translator. So I don't want to disparage any of those, but they only go so far, and I would recommend that as a good starting point, but in no way is that, a permanent solution.
I just have really quick 2 resources to add on top of what Zach and Timber already said. I used these resources when I transitioned. They were very helpful. Veterati and American Corporate Partners, completely free for transitioning veterans. You can get resume review, you can get mock interviews, you can find a mentor. That was a big key for me in the field you want to go into. Most of these people are veterans themselves who are working in corporate America in different jobs. So highly recommend those 2.
Thank you. So I appreciate what you said, Zach, right? There's lots of resources out there, and sometimes the challenge is helping people navigate that while they're navigating other transitions and all those kinds of things. So helping get people connected, that's always so much of the challenge with resources, is trying to create a system where there's no wrong door, right? Where folks can go anywhere and get access to, referrals to, warm handoffs to those folks that are going to help them meet that needs. So most of you talked about some of the resources that are available for veterans. I'm curious though, too, when we're talking about, businesses, organizations becoming veteran friendly. So what about that side of it? And Zach, you kind of touched on this a little bit in terms of some of the SHRM and some of those things are available, but how do we help our employers, right? Or how do we help those folks that are working with small businesses or are trying to support small businesses? How do we help them on their side, right? Learn more about, the questions to ask about, the structures how do we help prepare them on their side of that equation?
Yeah, absolutely. That was precisely the question that I was asked a year ago when I joined the chamber. So my original purpose when I joined the chamber was to develop a workforce program. And really the guidelines I was given is make it about workforce, go. There really wasn't a lot of direction, which is where I thrive. I like being creative and I like building new things. So that was fine with me. I know when I shared my role a year ago with some folks, they're like, so what are you going to do? I'm like, I'll figure it out. Like that's what I'm going to do. And really something that I learned in a previous role, so shout out to the Fox Valley Veterans Council, the charity I worked for before I was with the chamber. One thing they really are passionate about, and I've taken that along with me in my career, is avoid duplication at all costs. Because if the federal government is funding a program that does a thing and some other funding source is funding to do the same thing, and then, there's another organization, and really all that does is dilute the product for whoever you're trying to help. So what I didn't want to do was duplicate what DWD and WDVA and CVI and we have all of these resources across the state that have this passion towards finding a veteran and leading them to a job, and then finding a veteran and leading to a job. So when I was building the workforce program for the Veterans Chamber, I didn't want to do that. Why would we recreate that? Let's just support those institutions that already exist and then build on it. And the way that we built on it is I said, well, who's working with the businesses? Who's increased or who's leveling up the landing spot, if you will. So who's having these conversations with the medium to large enterprises that unanimously say that they love having veteran talent and they want to hire more veterans. They can't always articulate why, but it's just this unanimous, we love our veterans, whether it's a deep thought or not. But what do we do about that? What are the struggles that those businesses are having? And a lot of it is basically around, we love veterans. The veteran talent we have is great. We want to hire more veterans. We've been taking stabs in the dark for the last 20 years and have no idea if it's even been successful. And really, and this is probably a shameless or opportunity to shamelessly plug Invest in Vets, which is our program at the Veterans Chamber to work with those medium to large enterprises. And I developed the mantra, recruit, develop, retain. And again, my panelists have already mentioned, it's not about just hiring the veteran. What do you do after they get there? So obviously the recruiting piece of Invest in Vets is pretty straightforward. We help identify different funnels, for talent, whether it's transitioning service members, veterans that are graduating from tech schools or four-year institutions. There's all different types of pipelines, to get veteran talent that I'm familiar with, but apparently, unless you work in the space, it's a little more unknown than I originally thought. So I love having those conversations because companies love recruiting, and recruiting is a very important part of those medium to large enterprises. So they always want the pipelines. That's always the in the front of their minds. This is where you can find more veteran applicants. But then again, on that develop and retention piece, once the veteran gets there. And this is something I have a conversation with businesses all the time. And again, if they're non-veteran hiring professionals, they don't understand that there is near perfect transparency when it comes to compensation and benefits in the military. The rank is on your collar. Really the only unknown variable is exactly how long you've been in. But you can just look at somebody's uniform and basically develop a mental pay range, of what their compensation is, what their approximate responsibility and authority is. It's about as transparent as anything that exists in the workplace anywhere. And then, you make this transition to the civilian world where, a lion's share of positions that are posted online don't even show a compensation range. And so now I'm a transitioning service professional who's already against the gun and underprepared to articulate what I've done. And now I also have to figure out what positions I should apply for, which ones I'm not wasting somebody's time applying for, because I don't know enough about the sector that I'm trying to get into. Because like Darlene said, we're going to take our transferable skills elsewhere because I don't want to do IT anymore. But now I'm moving into a new sector in the civilian world where I don't have connections, I don't have mentors, I don't have knowledge of the titles. If there was a network administrator, I know what that is, in the civilian world, but I didn't want to do that. So now what are the titles? What are the leadership titles? What is the pipeline? Another thing about active duty is you have a completely transparent career path. You know exactly that if I'm E1, the next one's E2, and I know how much time has to pass, and what needs to happen for that to happen, and then so on and so forth. And then the officer ranks have the same deal. Guess what comes after O1? O2. There's a lot of clarity, there's a lot of transparency, and then you get to the civilian sector, and there is none. And trying to articulate that frustration to a non-veteran hiring professional, it's really almost a waste of time. So that's what we do with the Invest in Vets program. We engage the hiring manager up. It needs to be a leadership change. It needs to be a culture change. And we engage those folks with recruit, develop, retain for veteran talent. So hopefully that wasn't too long of a going off a little bit, but thank you.
I just want to add in there because your question kind of was like, what can employers do, right, to be able to really create a welcoming environment, to invite to recruit, to retain veterans in their workplace. And one of the things is if you are a workplace that has employee work groups, having a veteran employee work group can go a super long way. And if you are not an employer who has employee work groups, it's something that you may want to look into because it is a great, particularly in today's employment times, it is a great recruitment and retention tool. And if you're wondering what an employee work group is, it is literally a group within the institution, the organization that centers around a specific demographic and brings them together to do good things, whether out in the community externally or do good things internally within the company. So, one example would be if there is a veterans employee work group, they would be probably largely responsible for whatever your organization was going to do to celebrate Veterans Day coming up here at the end of the week. And then you don't have it's informed, it's on point. You don't have your HR scrambling to learn and figure it out and to call people in. These people are going to have relationships within the veteran community to be able to call in people to do things such as color guard or the things that you want. It's a great way to recruit and retain your veterans. Because the one thing about the veteran population is it's tight niche. They talk, they hang with each other, they know each other. And when we find spaces that treat us well and want us, you're going to get more of us.
I want to say it from a small business or smaller business owner perspective, because I know a lot of big corporations and big organizations will have those veteran group resources, affinity groups that help them to navigate those veteran career in their companies. But in smaller business, you may only have 1 or 2 veterans. So what do you do in that case? My suggestion is keep the conversation going. Get to know them. It can be more personal than the big corporations. I know a lot of veterans may be open about their past, about their experiences. Some of them do not. So respecting that. If you have any questions, you can ask, but respect the boundaries. And then I know as a small business owner, a lot of my employees does not come to my shop as an employee, as a forever employee. At one time, they will move on. They will do bigger and better things. So I always, during the interview, ask them, what do you want to do in your future career? Do the same thing to the veterans. What's your career goals? And help them to get there. For example, when I was a behavioral health specialist, I did 1-year tour in Afghanistan. That experience taught me so much than 4 years in school. But in civilian job, that 1 year does not translate directly into a certificate, a license, or a degree. That doesn't mean I have less experience or I have less knowledge than those who have those certificate. So just really talk to your veteran, get to know their skills, know their experiences, and help them to move forward to their career. And really, that's the way you really care about veteran, about their career path in the future.
I have just 2 things to add to what everyone else says. But I think the biggest thing that you can do for veterans to be veteran friendly is make sure that they belong. And like Timber said, those we call them employee business resource groups, but I think every company calls it something different. We go to community service events. We are having a Veterans Day lunch tomorrow. We have mentorship. We just have different events and different ways to connect. And I feel like veterans are really adaptable, and we move every few years. We're not new to being new to the community, but we're used to having that family around us. Like wherever you went in the military, you always had that, you felt like you belonged because everyone was in the same situation as you. So that's kind of what we call it, our Oshkosh Corporation Military Network, the OCMN. Military loves their acronyms. So our OCMN, it's just another way for veterans to connect and feel like they belong in the community and in the company. And that helps retain them too. And then the second thing is we also provide benefits specifically for our Reserve and National Guard. And so I think that's something that not a lot of companies might do, but if someone goes on a 3-month deployment, they'll continue to accrue PTO with us. They'll continue to have their benefits covered. We actually even offer differential pay. So if their military pay is less than what they make here, we offer that differential pay. And and we even do a little welcome recognition when they return. So we have like a returning heroes newsletter that goes out to the community when they come back, and we try and get them a little gift. So those little things make it really easy for people to still continue to serve, but also progress in their military career just by providing those simple benefits.
That's awesome, Darlene. I appreciate you mentioning the Guard and Reserve component, because that actually is another question that we get quite often, even from small businesses like Fannie. There's legislation, protecting Guard and Reserve folks that get activated, whether it's USERA or whatever it should be. We don't pretend to be the experts on that, but what we do is we have a partner in ESGR, which is Employer Service of the Guard and Support of the Guard and Reserve. And we refer all of those businesses that bring those questions to us to ESGR. And that's really our role as the chamber, is that convener. We don't need to be the expert of all things, but we do want to be as informed as we can be, for those referrals. So I just wanted to kind of double down on that, because that's a really important ongoing concern, for businesses, because, our Guard and Reserve is a very important part of our force, both for the military and for the civilian workforce. So I just wanted to highlight that.
So, wow, you guys just set this up perfectly. I so appreciate, because having this conversation, I've heard two things, right? I've heard those things that are specific to veterans, right? What are some of the things that we can do as businesses, that veterans can do to create that environment, right? But I'm also hearing the thread of, this is the work that we do in DEI. This is the work that we need to be doing for everybody. That also is supportive of veterans, from looking at your systems and all of the components of your systems to see where you might be creating barriers, every place from that job description down to your view of your organization and what are the career paths that are available for people. How are you being clear about those things that are going to help anybody coming to the organization? And also that specific lens of how this creates barriers for veterans. So transferable skills are something that should be important for all employers to learn and understand. And here's how it applies for veterans. Employee resource groups are important for a lot of reasons. Here's another reason why they're important for veterans. Understanding culture, right? And it's not just getting people in the door. Diversity, equity, inclusion work is not just about getting people in the door, because once you've got them in the door, how are you going to keep them? So we're talking about retention. How do you understand the needs of the various groups and be informed by groups like ERGs or affinity groups, be informed by folks with those experiences so that we can continue to do this work better. So I hope as people are listening to this, if we're talking specifically about people who do this work, but maybe haven't opened up that lens as broadly to consider what this means for veterans, to me, that was one of the reasons that I really wanted to have this conversation today. And I feel like you guys have set it up perfectly. So whether you meant or not, it's fantastic. I really appreciate that. I would like to, let's see, how are we doing here? So I would like to hear, what are some of the wins you've seen? What are some of the successes, maybe from each of you here, at least one? What is a win or a success that you've seen from a business or organization that has demonstrated, that has demonstrated clearly that they are veteran-friendly organizations, or in a particular instance, at least? What does that win look like in practice? And then if you have a recommendation on like how folks who are listening today can help create that win for themselves.
Well, I was always talking first, so I didn't want to go first again, but I can't stand the silence, so I'm going to jump in. So I like that you brought up, obviously DEI is an important component, of the veteran space. And, everybody on the call knows that, DEI is not it's not a political agenda. It really is understanding that if you have people in the room that all, if everybody agrees before the meeting starts, the meeting's a waste of time. You're not going to uncover any new information. You're not going to have an interesting conversation. You're not going to potentially identify issues, that otherwise wouldn't have been identified. And the purpose of DEI is to have a higher quality thought process in your organizations, whether it's small business, whether it's medium to large enterprise, whether it's government. And that's the conversation that we lead with when we have the DEI conversation, because there is kind of this, I guess, unfortunate political assumption, with the DEI conversation. We want to dispel that, as quickly as possible, because this isn't about pushing an agenda or anything like that. And unfortunately, the DEI conversations we have with some of our medium to large enterprise partners do sound kind of check in the box. We want to hire more veterans. Like, okay, why? Well, because it's the right thing to do. It's like, nope, that's the wrong answer. And it's the same thing with any other type of diversity. You take veteran out and put any other diverse group in there, and we want more diversity. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. It's like, nope, that's not where this needs to go. So it's understanding, what the value of diverse thought. It's understanding, if you want to hire veterans, understand that there's actually a competitive advantage if you have a higher percentage of veterans in your organization. There's a lot of data to support that, and that's a much better response. And it's the same thing with diverse workforce. You want to have more diversity in your organization, understand it provides a competitive advantage in the marketplace. That's why you should want diversity, not because it's a check in the box or because, it's some sort of federal, thing that we're trying to achieve a certain metric. You don't want to make it transactional. You want to understand why you're doing it. And the companies who understand the why are often the ones who are more successful. So for us, two of the big champions in our state that have been members of the chamber for a long time constantly show what the quality of a well-built out employee resource group. We have Rockwell Automation, which is a very big organization, headquartered in the southeast part of the state. Absolute rock stars when it comes to employee resource groups. And it's been mentioned before, there are different levels. You have kind of this affinity group where the organization puts the onus on, in this case, the veterans. So basically the organization gives the green light to let the veterans organize. And that's kind of that affinity group level. And then as you move up into a more sophisticated ERG model, there are organizations, Associated Bank is another one, they call them CRGs. And I mean, they have purpose. They have stated, some of them and some organizations have charters. Some of them have funding. There's actually budget allocation for these organizations because they have a mission, whether it's a community impact, whether it's to help with veteran talent acquisition, whatever the stated purpose is, there's organization, there's purpose, and there's funding to actually achieve that. And the biggest wins and the organizations that we would want other organizations to model themselves after are the ones who have taken the time and actually invested, the financial resources and given people the space to, because these are all terms that have, already been used. But that's part of the Invest in Vets as well, is if there's an organization watching this, not just the veterans, if there's a business that wants to, be more diverse, they want to hire more veterans, or whatever the purpose is, we would love to have that conversation, on the why. And then once you have the why figured out, the how is the easy part, that already exists. What you need to do is figure out the why. And that's what I would tell a business.
I'm gonna give you a mic drop on that one. That was fantastic. A win. I was thinking a much simpler win, because I think we sometimes it's just the very beginning of the conversation are a really simple win, and one of the simplest wins I saw happen with an organization was very much like Zach was just talking about. The organization wanted to recruit veterans and they had this will, but they don't know how. But the organization took the opportunity to reach out to the resources like a lever. And I don't know the position above the lever, who goes out and finds all of these other companies, or basically collects a list of people, organizations who want to hire veterans, and brought them in to tell them, what do we need to do to be more veteran friendly and to recruit veterans. The next thing I would say that is a really fantastic thing I saw was within an organization, the promotion of veteran services events and giving them the ability to go participate in them, whether you were a veteran or not. And that's where maybe you're not the veteran, but your parents served. Maybe your spouse serves. Maybe your child serves. And taking those steps, which I want to put those in the framework of emotional intelligence steps, really says a lot about the organization, and also really speaks to um, an organization really taking on the responsibility of being a veteran friendly organization and creating a veteran friendly environment.
I want to share a story happened a couple months ago. Again, this is from the perspective of smaller business who is only have like 1 or 2 veterans in their workforce. I had met someone from a car repairman shop who's a master surgeon who just retired a couple months ago. And he was in charge of my car repair. Why? Because I do have the USAA insurance. USAA, for those you don't know, is an insurance company and banking service that is especially for military service and their family members. And their company put him in this project to specifically in charge of the military members and their family members for US who has the USAA insurance. He may not have someone to talk about the military life or somebody he feel related to in the workplace because he's the only veteran, but he is able to be in contact, make connections with his clients, which are veterans or veteran families or military service families. So that's a win for me, for a smaller business that who makes the effort to make the veteran feel belonging and comfortable.
I know we only have a few minutes left, so I feel like for us, a win is anytime we get to hire a veteran. I'll just keep it short and simple, especially when we get to take a chance on them and when we look at their transferable skills. But when you start practicing everything we've started talking about, your veteran population is just naturally going to grow. Our veteran population sits at 10%, and we're a manufacturing facility. So almost 10% of our employee population is a veteran. That's almost 1 in 10. So I think that's amazing. And that's just because over time, we've slowly started building out those benefits, those sense of belonging, all of the things we've talked about. So I will end with that.
And I don't want to open a second can of worms, but something that we haven't covered much, is that higher ed space. I know that's how I know Timber from, my time at UW Oshkosh. And I'm actually co-chairing a task force with Heroes for Healthcare, which is a nonprofit that tries to streamline the process of medical professionals in the military transitioning to medical roles in the civilian workforce. And the task force is right now working on this concept of credit for prior learning. And that's something that pretty much every veteran that has gone through any level of higher education has a story. There's unfortunately. So that's just one thing that, again, is a lot about education. It's a lot about, understanding the scope and the just absolute insane variety, that is military service. And that's just something that I wanted to be part of the conversation. It was the credit for prior learning. And really, because Darlene has used the term transferable skills a lot, which is a great term. But it's not just employers that need to have that conversation and that education. Our higher ed institutions also need to participate.
Well, we are just about at time. I cannot thank you all enough for your willingness to take the time to join us today. You all have shared so many fantastic ideas and resources. So I will do a follow-up for the audience who's listening. I'm going to do a follow-up with folks and try to get a couple of these resources down so that we can share that. I can share that along with the post. So I will add that within the next couple of days when folks have time and are able, add that so that folks can see what some of those resources are that exist in case you're not aware of them. I just am I shouldn't say that I'm amazed, because I'm not, because I know that you guys are rock stars. I know that you're fantastic people, and that you each would, bring your own perspective to this. But I really appreciate, that I feel like folks should be able to walk away with one or two things that they can actually do walking away from today. So we'll share the resources so they have some ideas for conversations that you can have when you go back to your workplace. Again, whether it's a small business, whether it's a medium to larger size business, hopefully something that you heard today from one of our panelists will help you open up that conversation to take that next step. Wherever you are today, open up that conversation to see what you can do to help ensure that wherever you are today, first of all, that you know where you are today, right? That you're doing that assessment to figure out how your veterans really feel about how you think you're doing. And then take that next step to say, okay, where are the gaps? Where can we take our next step forward, and keep moving to help create more veteran-friendly workplaces out there? Again, thank you all for joining us today. Panelists, hang with me for just a moment. I look forward to hearing your feedback. I know we could probably continue this conversation for another couple hours, but maybe that's something for the future. Thank you all for tuning in. I look forward to hearing additional questions or ideas for what you'd like to hear more from in the future. Thank you.